This program is provided by Universal Genesis.
When we think about Aristotle and Alexander the Great, we usually picture this perfect mentorship, don't we? You know, the greatest teacher and the greatest conqueror.
Yeah, we assume there was this incredible collaboration, this sense of pride. But the sources, they really paint a much, much colder picture, almost an estrangement.
It just completely flips the script, doesn't it? It makes you rethink what legacy even means.
It does, because this deep dive shows a fundamental conflict. You have Alexander building an empire of space, all about rapid physical conquest.
Right.
And then you have Aristotle, who is quietly building an empire of time, something systematic, something meant to last forever.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Right.
What happens when a teacher's core values are just violently at odds with his student's ambition? Our mission here is twofold. First, to get to the truth of that cold relationship.
And second, to explore this really powerful idea that Aristotle wasn't just a philosopher, he was a practical methodologist. He was, in a way, the world's first academic director.
A methodologist, I like that.
And we'll see that his whole intellectual system was so advanced that it was basically misunderstood for over 1,000 years. It wasn't until Avicenna, a physician and an administrator, came along and finally saw it for what it was.
Which was what?
A universal tool for analysis. Not just a philosophy, but a toolkit for understanding absolutely anything.
Let's start with the basic timeline, because the facts themselves suggest a lot of distance between them.
They really do. Aristotle was born in 384 BCE. He was a full 21 years older than Alexander.
And he only tutored him for a pretty short window, right?
A very short window, from when Alexander was about 13 to 16. After that, their paths just diverged completely.
And here's a detail that really drives that home for me.
Yeah?
Alexander dies at just 32.
In 323 BCE, yeah. And Aristotle, who was 54 at the time, outlives him by exactly 1 year.
So he didn't just teach him in his youth. He lived long enough to watch the entire chaotic collapse of everything Alexander built.
He saw the whole thing crumble, instantly.
Which brings us to the core of the rift. The sources say Aristotle is cold, that he felt no pride in Alexander's conquests. Why? Why would the most famous teacher not be proud of his most famous student?
Because Alexander became the living embodiment of everything Aristotle warned against.
Everything.
I mean, think about Aristotle's philosophy. It's all centered on the polis, the small, self-sufficient Greek city-state. It values reason, moderation, masin, and friendship, philia.
And Alexander's life was, well, the opposite of moderation.
Completely. Unlimited ambition, unchecked violence,
Well,
this shift toward a kind of despotic style. It violated every single one of Aristotle's core principles.
can we just pause on Melrasen? We hear moderation and it sounds a bit, boring. But for Aristotle, it was more than that, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just a personal virtue, like don't eat too much. It's the structural foundation for a stable state. It's the balance that prevents a society from falling into tyranny or chaos.
So when Alexander was acting without limits,
He wasn't just being a bad person. In Aristotle's view, he was undermining the very possibility of a good society. It proved one of Aristotle's theories from the Nicomachean Ethics, that immense power almost always corrupts virtue.
Alexander was the ultimate case study in his teacher's warnings.
Exactly. And then there was the political break. Aristotle was a firm believer in the, let's call it, the Greek way, and he saw Alexander's policy of fusing Persians and Greeks, taking the title King of Asia.
Adopting all those Persian customs.
He saw it as a disaster, as the destruction of Greek civilization, not its triumph.
And that all culminates in something deeply personal, the execution of Callisthenes.
That was the final straw. It had to be. Callisthenes wasn't just some guy in Alexander's court. He was Aristotle's own relative, a peer, an intellectual.
And he was executed for what, basically? For speaking his mind.
For criticizing Alexander's growing absolutism. For Aristotle, the philosopher of reason and friendship, to see his student execute his relative for holding to those very values. It must have been a profound psychological break.
So they were just. Oil and water. Alexander, the world empire creator. Aristotle, the philosopher of the polis.
Which leads us to the really interesting part. While Alexander was conquering territory, what was Aristotle doing?
He was building his own kind of empire.
A much, much more durable one. While Alexander was focused on space, on land, Aristotle was back in Athens, building his empire of time.
At the Lyceum. And I think this confirms what a lot of us suspect. This wasn't just a school. It was something more.
It was something totally new. We have to stop thinking of it as just a discussion group like Plato's Academy.
Oh.
The Lyceum was the world's first major private research institute. It was a library, a lab, and a knowledge factory all rolled into one.
So less of a school and more like a combination of a think tank and a natural history museum.
That's a great way to put it. They were doing massive data collection. They were gathering biological specimens from all over the known world. They were creating formal logic with the organon.
And the most famous project collecting the constitutions. 158 of them. This wasn't abstract theory. This was comparative political science on a scale that had never been seen before.
When you put those two side by side, Alexander's fiery conquest and Aristotle's patient collection, it's just no contest, is it?
None at all. Alexander's empire was a firework. Bright, huge, and then gone. Aristotle was building the intellectual infrastructure for the next 2,000 years. He was creating a system to accumulate knowledge forever.
So if we accept that Aristotle was the academic director of this whole operation, then that leads to a really revolutionary way of reading his works. His densest writings, they're not just philosophy.
They're the instruction manuals for the institution.
Manuals, I love that.
Take the metaphysics. It's famously difficult. It seems disorganized. But what if it's not a book in the modern sense? What if it's the Lyceum's new student orientation script?
Okay, that makes so much sense. It's the document you get on day one that says, here's how we do things here. Precisely. It's the school's mission statement, it says. This is what we study being itself. This is what we reject Plato's ideal forms. And here are the fundamental rules of thinking, like the principle of non-contradiction. It's the shared operating system.
And at the core of that operating system, every student had to learn the two main tools, the 10 categories and the 4 causes.
They are the twin wheels of the whole system. The 10 categories are the static part. Think of them like the shelves in a library. They tell you what something is. Substance, quantity, quality, place, time. They're the labels.
Okay, so the categories are for classification. What about the 4 causes?
The 4 causes are the dynamic part. They're the lenses you use to understand change in existence. They don't just tell you what something is. They explain how and why it came to be.
Let's use an example. A student at the Lyceum is analyzing, say, a bronze statue of Alexander.
Perfect. First, the categories. It's a substance, a statue of a man. It has a quantity, 6 feet tall. A quality, it's shiny. A place in the courtyard. That's the static profile.
That's the easy part.
Right.
Yeah.
Now for the analysis, the 4 causes. The matter cause is the bronze it's made from. The form cause is the shape of Alexander that the sculptor imposed on the bronze.
Okay.
The agent cause is the sculptor who did the work. And the final cause, the goal, is its purpose, to commemorate a victory, to inspire the troops.
So categories classify, but the causes explain. It's an engine for turning information into actual understanding.
It's an incredibly powerful analytical engine, and you can extend that view to his other works. The organon, his logic, is the toolkit, but we should probably include rhetoric and poetics in that toolkit too.
Okay, I can see rhetoric as a training manual for, public speaking or debating your findings. But poetics, his work on drama and tragedy, how is that a practical manual for academic work? That feels like a stretch.
It does, until you look at what it's really about. It's not just literary criticism. It's a deep study of structure and causal necessity.
Go on.
If you're teaching students how to write a scientific report or a political analysis, what's the most important thing? A coherent argument. A clear beginning, middle, and end, where every point follows logically from the last.
So why use tragedy as the example?
Because a good tragedy is the perfect model of causal construction. The plot is so tightly woven that if you change one tiny detail, the whole thing falls apart. By analyzing tragedy, Aristotle was teaching his students how to build a waterproof, causally necessary argument. It's a masterclass in structure.
So this whole practical, powerful toolkit was just sitting there for centuries after Aristotle and Alexander were gone.
For the most part, yes. It was reinterpreted, theologized, until Avicenna, Ibn Sina.
Yeah.
He's the one who seems to have just cleared away all the dust and seen the original machine underneath.
And it makes perfect sense that it would be him. He wasn't just a scholar sitting in a room.
Not at all. He was a practicing physician, and he was a high-level government administrator, a vizier. His day-to-day life demanded tools for analyzing complex, real-world systems. He needed things that worked.
So how did he actually apply these tools, like the 4 causes?
Well, in medicine, he used it as a diagnostic framework. The body is the matter cause. The person's healthy constitution is the form cause. The disease or injury is the agent cause. And the goal, the final cause, is restoring health. It brought order to the chaos of symptoms.
That's brilliant. What about for running a government? How does that work?
It's the same logic. The state's resources, the land, the people, that's the matter. The laws and institutions, that's the form. The political pressures, the leaders, the enemies, they are the agent cause. And the goal?
Stability.
Prosperity.
Exactly. The final cause is a stable, prosperous state. He turned Aristotle's philosophy into a practical tool for statecraft.
And the ultimate proof of his practical focus is how he handled the most abstract part of Aristotle. The first cause, the unmoved mover.
This is such a key point. Avicenna, a devout Muslim, looked at Aristotle's first cause and treated it not as God, but as a logical necessity.
So not a religious being, but a kind of philosophical requirement. Yes. It was the thing that had to exist at the top of the system to make the logic work. It was an intellectual placeholder, completely detached from religious passion. It just proves that he saw Aristotle's work for what it was. A set of tools, a universal method, completely separate from doctrine. At the end of the day, that's the great contrast we've unpacked. Alexander's empire of space was spectacular, but it was brittle. It shattered. Aristotle's intellectual empire, his framework, provided the tools, those four lenses that were used to build and analyze things for the next 2 millennia. The teacher who valued methodical patience outlasted the student who chased glorious conquest.
And you now have a much deeper and maybe a more complicated view of one of history's most famous relationships. It shows that the most powerful legacies aren't always built by force, but by creating systems of knowledge that allow other people to see the world more clearly. So here's the thought to take with you from this deep dive. If Aristotle's Poetics was a manual for building an argument, and Avicenna used the metaphysics to analyze a government, what everyday system in your own life could you understand better this week by using the 4 causes? Take those 4 lenses, matter, form, agent, and goal, and just try applying them to a project at work, a personal goal, or even just the way your family organizes its week. What are the hidden causes shaping your world?
This program is provided by Universal Genesis.